to make sure it's working.
Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityanam Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayet. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Shatarine. Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Haribol. We are continuing with the Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto. Today beginning chapter 29. So Narad Muni has concluded his story, his allegory about King Puranjana. And now we'll hear how King Prachinabarhi, who was the audience this whole time, who's been listening along with us, he's going to ask questions like, please explain this story to me. I can tell that there's lots of lessons in it, but I don't understand. So it's good to ask questions whenever we don't understand something. Because we want to understand. If we don't understand something and we just stay silent, it means we don't really care whether or not we've learned. So we want to be invested in our spiritual education. We don't want to receive things passively. But whenever we have a question or a doubt, we should find somebody that we trust that we can ask. Does that make sense? Okay. So we're covering texts 1, 2, 3, and 4 today. Prachinabarhi uvacha bhagavam ste vachosmabhir na samyag avagamyate kavayastad vijananti navayam karma mohita. King Prachinabarhi replied, "My dear Lord, we could not appreciate completely the purport of your allegorical story of King Puranjana. Actually, those who are perfect in spiritual knowledge can understand, but for us who are overly attached to fruitive activities, to realize the purpose of your story is very difficult." So Prachinabarhi here is saying, Vayam, we are karma mohita. We are enchanted is the word for word given, definition given here. Enchanted, it also means like deluded. Moha means delusion, that you're accepting something false to be real. You're mistaken. You're confused by karma, bewildered, enchanted by fruitive activities and their fruits, the results of your fruitive work. So for such persons, it's very difficult to hear transcendental knowledge because it goes against their prevailing paradigm. It's very difficult to hear somebody who disagrees with us about anything. When somebody disagrees with us, we don't want to hear it. it's very difficult to let down our guard and listen to a different perspective, somebody else, what they think about it. So if it's that difficult just to hear a different kind of opinion or a different kind of perspective, think about how difficult it is for all of us who are conditioned to want to enjoy the material energy. Think about how difficult it is for us to hear about Krishna, to hear that Krishna is the only enjoyer, that all fruitive activity is useless and a total waste of time and energy, that the person you think that you are is something like a dream. It's like a dream life that we're living, that we'll die at the end of our life, whenever that might be, we'll die. And then in the next life, we'll have a new body and a new life, and we'll think that that's all in all. So we don't want to wait until we're on our deathbed to have a spiritual awakening. We want to have a spiritual awakening now. So we have to very consciously set aside our prejudices, our ideas about what's good and what's bad, about what's true and what's not true. And we should listen carefully to what Krishna has to say and what the spiritual master has to say. And in this particular moment, Narada Muni is the one playing the role of the spiritual master. So King Prachinabarhi is asking him, please explain to me the meaning of this story. So in his purport, Prabhupada quotes a verse from Bhagavad Gita, Shribhir Gunamayar Bhavar Ebhi Sarvamidam Jagat Mohitam Nabhijanati Mamepya Param Avyayam. And the translation is, deluded by the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. Prabhupada writes, generally people are enchanted by the three modes of material nature and therefore practically unable to understand that behind all materialistic activities in the cosmic manifestation is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. That means that even though on the surface it looks like the planets are in orbit, the plants are growing, my body's growing, my heart's beating, the sun is shining in the sky every day, the sun shows up on time, right? You never have to call the sun and ask, hey, are you coming today? Are you going to rise today? No, the sun rises on time every day. Doesn't have to be called. It's easy to take for granted all these natural wonders, especially when we live in an urban, man-made environment that conceals the beauty of nature. When we live in nature, we naturally feel awe and gratitude for nature's bounty. We see that even to have water that we can drink is a gift. To have fresh air we can breathe. To have food that we can eat. All of these things we can see clearly how these are all gifts from Mother Nature. But the tendency of the conditioned soul is to want to lord it over the material nature. And so they create all kinds of artificial infrastructures to enhance their ability to exploit the Lord's energy. So, there's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains the relationship that's just the natural relationship between the living entities and the material energy. Let's see if I can remember it. Parayam itastvanyam prakriti vidhime param jiva bhutam mahabaho yayedam dharyate jagat. That the living entities are superior to the material nature. but they're trying to exploit her. They're trying to exploit her. And so they're trying to kick out Krishna to take his place. Like a paramour, or someone who's having an affair with a wife, who then plans how to kill the husband and make it look like an accident, so that he can take his place. So similarly, the atheists, they're always plotting how they can get Krishna out of the picture permanently. So they've come up with all kinds of campaigns how to make it look like Krishna doesn't exist. That to believe in Krishna is foolish. They try to make that case. They try to argue that. But their real purpose is just like the paramour. They just want to take the wife for their own selfish enjoyment. But she always belongs to Krishna. So even if they try to get him out of the picture, they'll never succeed, and she'll cheat them in the end. That's Maya Devi's program. She always cheats. She always cheats the atheists. Anyone who's not surrendered to the Supreme Lord is cheated by Maya. She's the best cheater. But she's fully chaste to the Supreme Lord. That's why. All right, moving on. So Prabhupada, he's explaining this, that because they're deluded, their vision is covered by the material energy in the form of the three modes, they can't recognize Krishna behind this material nature. Text 2. Narada Uvacha Purusham Puranjanam Vidyad Yadvyanakyatmana Puram Ekadvidvitri Chatushpadam Bahupadam Apadakam. The great sage Narada Muni continued, "You must understand that Puranjana, the living entity, transmigrates according to his own work into different types of bodies, which may be one-legged, two-legged, three-legged, four-legged, many-legged, or simply legless. Transmigrating into these various types of bodies, the living entity, as the so-called enjoyer, is known as Puranjana." So, the first verse, what happened in the first verse? What was the first verse of the chapter about? What happened? Just one verse that we just discussed. Do you remember? Somebody asked a question. Who was it? It was the king. It was King Pachinabarhi. He asked, "Narada, you've been telling this story and I can't understand it. Maybe I understand a little bit." He didn't want to sound like a complete idiot. A student never wants to sound like a complete idiot, because otherwise they're worried the teacher will lose hope. So it's good. The student should encourage the teacher. "Yeah, I kind of get it. I think I understand. Can you keep trying?" So in the first verse, King Pachinabarhi asked a question. So now for the remainder of this chapter, Narada Muni is going to explain all the different points of the allegory, of the story. Beginning with, who is Puranjana? Who is this king? Who does he really represent? Now all this time we've been covering this section, we've been hearing all of the different meanings thanks to our acharyas like Srila Prabhupada. And so we're already in the know. We already understand what Narada Muni is getting at. But Pachinabarhi, he's still kind of, there's still some suspense for him. Maybe he's secretly hoping that it's a story about somebody else. But really it's about him. It's like when we come to spiritual life and then we start to understand, oh, I have to give that up too. Oh, and I can't be like this anymore? Not that. Don't make me give up that. Yes, hand it over. We're going to take that too. But it's for our own good. Because Krishna just wants us to be happy. He doesn't want us to hold on to these things that actually make us miserable. They make us miserable in ways that we can't even recognize. That is the nature of the material energy. So, now in this next text, Narada Muni, text 2, is saying Puranjana is the so-called enjoyer of the body. The body is like a city, and Puranjana is the person residing in the city, the soul. The terminology used in Bhagavad Gita is Kshetra and Kshetrajna. Kshetrajna, the knower of the field. So Prabhupada discusses these different types of living entities. Ekapada, he says, refers to ghosts. It is said that ghosts walk on one leg. The word Dvipada, meaning biped, refers to human beings. When he is old and invalid, the human being is supposed to be a triped or three-legged. That's funny, huh? Triped, because he walks with a cane. Of course, the word Chatushpada refers to quadrupeds or animals. The word Bahupada refers to those creatures who have more than 4 legs. There are many insects, such as the centipede, and also many aquatic animals that have many legs, like an octopus. And then Apadaka, meaning without legs, refers to serpents. The name Puranjana indicates one who enjoys possessing different types of bodies. His mentality for enjoyment in the material world is accommodated by different types of bodies. So I have a saying I like to say, which is, curiosity killed the yogi. Because there's endless experiences we could be curious about having in this world. And ultimately, none of them will bring fulfillment. It's good to have a curious spirit, but that should be guided by higher understanding. We want to have just like a river. If the river doesn't have banks, 2 banks keeping it going in the right direction, then it'll just disperse into the land and be dried up by the sun. So similarly, our curious spirit, our inquisitive spirit, is very valuable, but it has to be channeled in the right direction. That's very important. So the banks of our inquisitive spirit should be the guidelines of the scripture. So the scripture never encourages anyone to hang around in the material world trying out this and 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 all these different kinds of experiences. We should have faith if we don't have realization. Maybe we haven't quite experienced this truth yet, but we should have faith when the scriptures say, and when our acharyas, our teachers, our spiritual teachers say that there's no happiness in the material world. Krishna calls this material world anityam asukam lokam. It's anitya, it's temporary, and it's asukha. It's devoid of happiness. Or whatever little happiness is there is very paltry in comparison to the real happiness awaiting us in our relationship with Krishna. And if we can do that, then our progress will be very rapid, because that curious spirit that everyone has, that's the nature of the mind, is to want to experience. So we all have a mind, so it's natural that we want to experience different types of things, but if we can keep our desires and our curiosity in bounds, like in a sport, you don't want to go out of bounds. So you don't want to go out of the bounds of the scripture. You want to stay in bounds. That means within devotional service. There's so many ways that we can experience different varieties of pleasure within devotional service, no problem. Things that are authorized, different foods to eat, games to play, songs to sing, so many things we can do for Krishna. Now we're going to hear in the next text about the Super Soul. Text 3. Yo vinyata hritastasya purushasya sakeshvara yanna vinyayate kumbhir namabhir vakriya gunaihi. The person I have described as unknown is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master and eternal friend of the living entity. Since the living entities cannot realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead by material names, activities, or qualities, he remains everlastingly unknown to the conditioned soul. Thanks. Okay, I'm going to keep you right here. No problem. So, Prabhupada writes, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is unknown to the conditioned soul, he is sometimes described as, in Vedic literature, as Nirakara, Avignata, or Avan Manasa Gochara. That means that he's beyond the jurisdiction of the mind. Oh, Madhavi's posting something. She's saying, this is Madhavi Devi. This might sound silly, but it occurred to me about ghosts. You read that ghosts are said to walk on one leg, and they are typically drawn like white with a tail, one leg hanging down. Interesting. Yeah, it is interesting how people depict ghosts. But it's different than a serpent. A serpent is legless, so yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe they hop. Anyway, it's not a pleasant state of existence.
Serpent slither.
Yeah, serpents slither. That's right. They go like this. Yeah, slither. All right. So
Really long tail.
there's certain, yeah, they have long tails. There's certain religious traditions that claim that God is unknowable, that his name is ineffable, it cannot be uttered. Because the scriptures say that God has no name, he has no form, he cannot be known, he cannot be seen, and so on. So all these things are true. But they're true from the standpoint of material existence. That Krishna is adhokshaja, he's beyond the jurisdiction of the mind and senses. However, we are not these mind and senses. We are not this body. We are spirit souls.
Yes.
Yes,
We are not a body.
we're not our bodies.
Mhm.
So, what does that mean? That means that when we act on the spiritual platform and awaken our spiritual mind and senses, then we can see Krishna. Then we can actually chant Krishna's name. Then we'll realize that God is not an unknowable entity. He's the only knowable entity.
Yes.
He says that in the Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, he says, Nyayam, I am the object of knowledge. Jnana, I am the process of knowledge. And he's the source of knowledge. In fact, in everything, there is nothing but Krishna. And still Krishna is outside.
Yes.
Maya tatamidam sarvam jagat avyaktamurtina. That within this material world, Krishna is saying, I am present, I am all pervading, and still I am external. I am outside of it in my personal form. So Krishna has a form, he has a name, he has qualities. But these are all transcendental. And so therefore the scripture in certain places says that the Lord is without qualities, he's without a name, he's beyond the jurisdiction of the material mind. It's an important distinction to pay attention to. Prabhupada quotes this verse from the Nectar of Devotion, originally quoted in Padma Purana, originally given in Padma Purana. Rupa Goswami includes it in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Atah Shri Krishna Namadi Nabhave Grahyam Indriyai Sevan Mukhe Jihvadao Svayameva Spuratyadaha. No one can understand Krishna as he is by utilizing the blunt material senses. However, the Lord reveals himself to his devotees, being pleased with them because of their transcendental loving service rendered unto him. Prabhupada writes, since the name, form, qualities, and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, cannot be understood by the material senses, he is also called Adhokshaja, meaning beyond sense perception. When the senses are purified by devotional activity, the devotee understands everything about the Lord by the Lord's grace. In this verse, the words Pumbhir, Namabhir, Va, Kriya, Gunai are especially significant because God, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has many names, activities, and qualities, although none of them are material. Despite the fact that all these names, activities, and pastimes are mentioned in the Shastras and understood by the devotees, the karmis, fruit of laborers, cannot understand them, nor can the jnanis, mental speculators, understand them. If we're too attached, okay, you can put it in this cup.
And this one is mush.
Okay, put it in there.
Put these in there.
If we're too attached to the process of fruitive labor, meaning material activity intended to bring about material results, or mental speculation, gyan, which means any endeavor on the subtle plane intended to advance our capability to lord it over the external energy of the Lord.
Oh, and a little water.
Okay. Can you go ask Miranda? Ask Miranda for some water. If we're too attached to either karma or jnana, then we cannot actually practice bhakti. We'll be barred. We'll be barred from the actual practice of bhakti. We can do mixed bhakti. There's different ways that you can do fruitive labor that connects to devotional service, or jnana that connects to devotional service. But if you're too attached, you will not actually be able to perform bhakti proper.
I have a snack also. But some of them are
So
sour. Oh my goodness. So that's why I won't.
Prabhupada writes, although there are thousands of names of Lord Vishnu, the karmis and jnanis intermingle the names of the Supreme Godhead with the names of demigods and human beings. Because they cannot understand the actual name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they take for granted that any name can be accepted. They believe that since the Absolute Truth is impersonal, they can call him by any name. Otherwise, they maintain he has no name. This is not a fact. Here it is clearly stated, Namabhir va Kriya Gunai. The Lord has specific names such as Rama, Krishna, Govinda, Narayana, Vishnu, and Adhokshaja. There are indeed many names, but the conditioned soul cannot understand them. So we shouldn't take for granted that we have this fortunate position of being able to appreciate the Krishna consciousness movement and chant Hare Krishna. We should never take it for granted. It's an extremely precious opportunity, a rare gift that we've been given, this chance to perfect our lives, and it's not something that most people get. It's very rare. Krishna says, Bahunam janmanamante jnanamanam papadite vasudeva saramiti samahatma sudurlabha. That only a very, very rare soul, after many, many thousands of lives, understands that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and surrenders unto him. So we should think like this, that my life is short, and if I die untimely, I don't know where I'll go. Of course, Krishna reassures Arjuna that he'll be able to pick up where he left off. But we want to keep some momentum. We don't want to. They say that if there's something auspicious, you should do it immediately. Do it immediately. Do it today. So many quotes, even from materialists. They say, don't leave for tomorrow what can be done today. Because if you leave it for tomorrow, guess what? Tomorrow never comes. Janaki asks this question to me often. She says, Dad, is it tomorrow? And I try to explain that actually tomorrow is always one day away. It's always the next day. So if you say, oh, well, I'll do it tomorrow, in one sense, you're saying, I'm never going to do it. Because tomorrow never actually arrives. Tomorrow is simply the abstract concept of something being delayed until the next sunrise. So we want to say, I'm going to do that now, or I'm going to do that at a concrete time, like tomorrow at 9 a.m. Now you put your flag down in reality. That this is what's happening. This is what's I'm going to do this. Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. So we don't want to wait for our next lifetime. That's the point. Point is that if we understand that Krishna consciousness is something good, and it's what we want, then there's no reason to put off taking it extremely seriously. As seriously as we take anything. More. Whatever we can muster, we should give to our Krishna consciousness. And we'll not be disappointed. Krishna is not one to disappoint. Even though it might look like his devotees are suffering sometimes, like the Pandavas. They were almost killed so many times. Or the gopis, they spent the majority of their life crying. But actually, Krishna does not disappoint. He does not disappoint. That his devotees are always unwavering in their attachment to him because they are never disappointed by him. All right, this is the last text we're going to cover today. Text 4. Yada jigrkshan purusha kartsnena prakriter gunan navadvaram grihastangri tatra manuta sadvite. When the living entity wants to enjoy the modes of material nature in their totality, he prefers out of many bodily forms to accept that body which has 9 gates, 2 hands, and 2 legs. Thus, he prefers to become a human being or a demigod. So the human form of life is the best because it allows for optimal, two couple reasons. It allows for optimal enjoyment. That in other forms of life, one's senses are sometimes more developed. For example, a dog has a very developed sense of hearing and a very developed sense of smell. So if we really want to enjoy smelling things and hearing things, then we may take birth as a dog. A bird has an extremely developed sense of sight. Frogs can hold their breath. They can go into samadhi. They can practice, I can't remember the kumbhareka or some process by which the breath is brought into the body and held and kept there. And they just circulate the life air. They go under the mud and remain in a type of trance for a long time. So in this way, each species of life has certain capacities that make it unique and in certain ways attractive, appealing. But the human form of life is the best because the mind is the most developed, manusha, that the human being Man has a developed mind. The word for man in Sanskrit is similar to the word for mind, mana, and to think. So that makes the human form of life special because actually through thinking, through hearing stories and through reading and appreciating the world, we can enjoy in a way that far surpasses the enjoyment of the animals. And what's more is that in the human form of life, we can also approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead and understand Him and revive our relationship with Him. So this is the actual value of the human form of life, that we can fully understand who am I and who is God. Hare Krishna. Is there any comments or questions? Yeah, Miranda. She comes. We'll give you the mic.
I unfortunately didn't get to hear the whole class.
That's all right, no problem.
But I really appreciated the reminder that to take spiritual life serious and to really, once you take it serious, like you can see yourself propelling forward. I actually was talking about this last night in Gita Circle, that it's really important to, and even Josh is actually sitting right here, and he was like, he gave us all a really sweet reminder that like we need to be fixed on Krishna, and whatever we need to do that, do it, and do it like yesterday. So it's always a really sweet reminder to hear
Great.
that we need to stay fixed.
Thank you. I want to share something on that. Did you have something else? Okay. So we live in this tiny house and we have a wood stove. And so when it gets cold in the house, we have to light a fire, which heats up the house. And you can't wait until it gets too cold because the fire doesn't instantaneously heat the house up to a certain temperature. And it's not a linear thing that the fire gets like this hot and then this hot and this hot and this hot. As the fire gets hotter, then the more of the wood burns. And if a fire is very hot, then you can put wood in and it will burn very quickly and get even hotter. So as the heat increases, more of the wood catches flame and it gets even hotter. So our spiritual life is like that the more heat we have in our spiritual life, then the more we can practice and the more that will further heat up or add, enhance, expand the fire of our Krishna consciousness. If the heat is always just on low, you don't really burn anything. There's a combustion point. Every object has a combustion point. There's paper, cardboard, and then there's like gasoline, and all these things. So the Bhagavatam gives the analogy of wet wood and dry wood to describe the effect of the modes of nature on our ability to actually appreciate the absolute truth and make forward movement towards the absolute truth. And sense enjoyment is compared to water, pouring water on the fire of our Krishna consciousness. Sense enjoyment that is not connected to Krishna. Authorized sense enjoyment, if done in the proper mood, like honoring prasadam or dancing in kirtan, or things like this, then it's not going to have a harmful effect, generally speaking. And, if we wanted to get really down to the details, you got to look at the examples of the acharyas, and, well, they're basically reducing their sense enjoyment, even the authorized sense enjoyment, cutting down sleep, cutting down eating, cutting down unnecessary talking and socializing. Because they're too absorbed in Krishna. They don't need to talk about, who's doing this and what's this person up to and what's going on here and wonder what the weather's like over there and etc. 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 So this is an important analogy that I really didn't understand fully until I actually had to make fires on a regular basis. What it means to have wet wood. It's extremely difficult to start a fire with wet wood. Actually, it's practically impossible. You need to have something dry that you can light, and then maybe that will catch the wet wood on fire if you can get it hot enough. But it's very difficult. It's extremely difficult. Madhavi says, about wood in the fire, was thinking this morning, this is the power of association, that if you even have just one stick that's hot, you can kindle an unlimited amount of wood that's not on fire. That's a very good point. That if you have one devotee, it's said that one pure devotee can deliver the whole world. And it's a fact. Just like one blazing stick can start a forest fire that burns down all of California. She writes, and also, unless you add more fuel to your spiritual fire, then even if you are red hot, you will burn out. That happens. You got wood in there, you think this is great, the fire is going great, and then you look back half an hour later, and it's all burned out. That's why the Bhagavata says, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. At least daily. Our acharyas gloss that word Nityam as meaning at least every day. Okay. At least every day. But preferably every hour and every moment. Preferably every hour and every moment, we should be adding more wood to our spiritual fire. That's a very good point. Thanks, Madhavi. You wanted to say something to Ruben? You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. You had something.
Yeah, it was just more of a comment of just how important it is, and like Madhavi said, like on both extremes, that we have to put enough fuel and take it seriously enough, but also like the point not to go so like radical with it that you burn out and you lose steam, because often we find ourselves at one end of the spectrum and then sometimes at the end, and sometimes we oscillate between the two. There are moments where we feel super inspired and super pumped up, and then we go extreme, but then we can't keep up that pace. Like, sometimes we're like, you know what, my chanting, I'll increase it to a certain extent that you can't keep up because it's not practical.
Yeah.
And then the quality starts to reduce, and then and then you go to to a point where it's just like the bare minimum, like terrible rounds, and it's just like a constant. So I think it's important that we find that strong middle ground, but at the same time not to stay at that middle ground and slowly increase the tolerance of what we can do, because then if we stay in mediocrity, we don't make any advancement. And if we try artificially to make advancement too fast, we really can't go anywhere.
All right. Madhavi has her comment on your comment, which is, I don't think personally that a spiritual fire can burn out. The failure is, one second. The failure is when we think the logs are coming from us. If we're burning out, it means we're not taking enough association. One log alone cannot sustain a fire. It's true. So the burnout thing is when you don't add more fuel. That's the point, is that you need to be regularly adding every day, and it should be according to taste. We don't want to be too much into the ritualistic, do it because I'm supposed to mode. When you have kids, you understand very quickly that just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. The mind is like a child, and children lose interest. You have to find a way to make it fun. For instance, Janaki never wants to, well, sometimes now she's good. When she was younger, she never wanted to take a bath. And we found out that if we make it into a game where she pretends to be Krishna or one of Krishna's cowherd friends or somebody like that, then she's super eager to take a bath. That's all we had to do, make it into a role play. Okay, Balaram, time to take your bath. And it was fun. So somehow or other, we have to make spiritual life fun. And that's going to be different for everybody. What's fun for me is going to be different than what's fun for you. And that's what I was trying to get at when I said keep it in balance. Keep it in balance. Don't go out of bounds with our fun. We got to have fun. But we want to make sure that we're having fun in a way that's actually adding fuel to the fire and not putting water on our fire. And we want to do it every day. We have to, everything that we do in life, we have our routines, our habits. We're creatures of habit, and so we want to develop spiritual habits that our spiritual life and our recreation life merge together to such an extent that when we're sitting down to chant our japa, or when we're going to open up the Srimad Bhagavatam, that it's extremely enjoyable. Right? So yeah.
Yeah.
Jai. Do you like coming to Srimad Bhagavatam class?
Yeah.
That was a yeah. Anything you want to share today? What was the song you were singing on the way over here? Remember that song? She was singing a nice song she was making up about how the material world's like a prison. She said the material world's a prison. Actually, the material world's not a prison, but it's like a prison. So that was nice,
Wow.
Nice insights from Janaki Rani. It's important. We got to remember that. We don't want to be cold, spiritually cold. When your house gets cold, you all of a sudden feel very uncomfortable, and you think, I don't want to be here anymore. Especially in the wintertime. You very quickly think that the house that seems so comfortable and nice, when it gets cold, you don't want to be there. So similarly, when the fire of our spiritual life gets cold, we think, what am I doing here? What is life really about? It's very unpleasant. So we have to add fuel to our spiritual fire. And Madhavi's point was very essential, that it's a question of association, that if you find somebody who's very spiritually hot, spiritually on fire, as they say, then that can very quickly heat up our wet logs, and then the water in the logs evaporates and they become dry, and then they catch. So we have to develop a lifestyle of goodness that the tamas and the rajas in our lives needs to transform into goodness so that we can have a fully favorable life for getting spiritually hot. It's just a natural process that the lower modes are converted into higher vibration. Hare Krishna. Madhavi says the fuel is the association. Yeah, and it's the sadhana, it's the chanting, it's the hearing, and so these are all different types of association with different manifestations of Krishna. Francesca says, Dear Harmony Collective, I want to thank each class and kirtan. Also want to thank the affection and concern for my health. Without a doubt, I feel part of the Harmony Collective at a distance. Hare Krishna. We're so glad. They are beautiful people who have made 2020 beautiful in my spiritual and personal life. Greetings from Chile. Hare Krishna. We're very happy. All right. Anyone else? Jai. All right, everybody. I think today is the last day of 2020, isn't it? Hare Krishna. So for persons following the Gregorian calendar, tomorrow will be the New Year. I like to say that because I'm hoping that within my lifetime, the Gaudiya Vaishnava world will feel very much aloof from the Gregorian calendar and will fully embrace the Gaurabda. Anyway, but it's good. It's good to think about the new year and goals and looking ahead. I'm slowly trying to recondition myself to think in terms of, we saw like with the Purushottam month and the Kartik month, it's nice, it gives some kind of context, and it's a spiritual context. In fact, the Gregorian calendar is so silly that it goes September, October, November. The 7th month, the 8th month, the 11th month. No, sorry, the 9th month, and then the 10th month. Yeah. It goes September, October, November, December, the 10th month.
Septa, Octa.
Yep, Septa, Octa, Nava, and then Desa, Deka, and then it starts over. But there's 12 months. And it's because these Greek or Roman kings or something, Julius Caesar and then Augusta, they wanted their own months, something like that. That's what I've heard. So it's very, very, like, what do they call it? Like a Khichdi calendar. Everything in there. Maybe one American president or a Chinese czar will become powerful enough that they'll get to throw their name in there. Maybe once that happens, then the devotees will kind of say, well, I guess we're done with this. We can go to the Gaurabda calendar. Maybe that'd be nice if, the Chinese government became the next world power, and then they changed the calendar and started throwing in these unpronounceable things that for us English-speaking persons. Hare Krishna. All right, anyway. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaur Bhakti Vrindi ki jai. Hare Krishna.